who love me and keep my commandments. What are these verses talking about? The first time you glance at them, you might think that God is cursing subsequent generations for their father's sin, or blessing subsequent generations for their father's sin. But that's not what's going on here. These verses are teaching that families and communities often set the stage for families and communities in the future. Idolatrous parents create an atmosphere in their families that encourages their children and their children's children to continue on in idolatry. Let's think about the Okinawa traditional religion for a second. It's very obvious how that takes place here. It is hard to break away from the Okinawa traditional religion because your entire family is going to be mad at you if you do. First of all, you have to convince yourself that the ancestors are not going to cause you harm if you become a Christian. But the worst thing, the thing that's so hard to accept, is that your family is going to reject you if you don't worship the Totome. When I have talked with people in the past about why people in Okinawa are afraid to become Christians, one of the things that they'll bring up is this very issue. And then they'll say the ones that it is most difficult for are those who are the firstborn, whether it's the firstborn son or his wife. They have a great deal of pressure on them to remain inside the Okinawan traditional religion because that part of the family is responsible for all of the rituals that exist in the family. And if you stop doing these rituals, your entire family is going to hate you. That's the legacy of idolatry. But Americans aren't in a better situation at all. In fact, our situation may even be worse. We likewise teach our children to be idolaters when we teach them to value something other than the one true God. Think about the man who is motivated by financial success. His kids are going to see what he does and see what he values, and they're going to learn to value money. Think about the person who is motivated by temporary pleasures. Their children are going to see that. They're going to see what exists inside the hearts of their parents, and they're going to learn to do the same. Kids have this way of knowing exactly what you're thinking and exactly what you're doing and exactly what's going on inside of you. It is very natural for them to do so. And they automatically make your way their way most of the time. Here's an illustration of how that sort of thing has happened in the West. A friend of mine, last week, a friend who is in England, said that he's having a little bit of a problem within his family. He's a young man. He and his brother both live inside their parents' household. And his brother was bringing his girlfriend home to have sex with her. And this guy was looking at his brother's actions with his girlfriend, and he said, this just isn't right. And so he went and talked with his mom, and he said, Mom, here's what's going on. And his mom laughed at him. And she said, that's just what kids do these days. What are you so upset about? And he was very upset. He didn't know what to do with all of this because he understood that the commandment, thou shalt not commit adultery, applied in this situation. You shouldn't be bringing your girlfriend, you should be having sex with your girlfriend, first of all, and you certainly shouldn't be doing it in your own mother's household. But the mom said everything is okay, the brother said everything is okay, and this guy is all upset because he knows that his mom and his brother both claim to be Christians. They both claim to follow after the commands of God. But think about how society has changed in the West over the last 100 years or so. 100 years ago, that would have been unthinkable in England. It would have been unthinkable in America. There is no way that somebody would have taken home their girlfriend and had sex with the girlfriend in their mother's household outside of marriage. But now we look at it and we say, so what? It's not just the commandment about adultery that's in view here. This guy has learned something very, very important from his mother and from his culture. That which gives me pleasure is what I will do. That is what we teach in the West. That is what we believe in the West. And the desire for pleasure has become more important to us in the one true God in following after His commandments. We are idolaters. So what are we going to do? What are we as a church and as moms and dads going to do? If you're a mom or a dad, then listen to me very closely. If you teach your children to value anything besides the one true God, then they will most likely follow right after you. You can't just take them to church once a week and think that everything is going to be okay in their lives, because they're going to watch everything that you're doing when you're at home, and they're going to be far more influenced by what they see in your life than they are by the words that are coming out of my mouth on Sunday for one more short hour. And they're going to follow after you instead of following after me. So you guys are the ones who are primarily responsible for idolatry inside your family. You guys have to make sure that your kids are following after the one true God. And there's good news that comes with this. Don't miss the stuff there in verse 6. God is the one who is showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. If you sincerely worship the one true God, and I'm talking about worshiping not just on Sunday, but worshiping in every aspect of your life 7 days a week, where your kids can see it, when they can look at your life and say, my daddy loves God and my mommy loves God, then they are most likely going to follow right after you. And here is a biblical example of how that was the case. Paul is talking to a young man whose name is Timothy. And this is what he says. I am reminded of your sincere faith. So I'm reminded of Timothy's sincere faith. A faith that dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and now I am sure dwells in you as well. There was a grandmother whose name was Lois, and she loved God. And she had a daughter whose name was Eunice, and this girl loved God. And she had a son whose name was Timothy, and he loved God as well. That is the legacy of blessing that we often see inside Christian families. When you turn from idolatry and you set your mind on God, then chances are your kids will do the same sort of things as you. Now, let's talk about how Christians can make a difference in their nation. And this should apply not only to Okinawa, where idolatry takes place, but also in America, where idolatry is absolutely rampant. There are ways in which Christians can affect the world around them. We can have an effect on our nations and on our cultures. When Christians take a hard stand against idolatry and they say, I'm not going to have anything to do with that, then it's going to have an effect on the world around them. There are a couple of kings in Israel's history that you should think about. One was King Hezekiah, and you can read about him in 2 Chronicles chapter 29. And the other is King Josiah, who is in 2 Chronicles chapter 34. And these guys were good kings. They were kings who rejected idolatry, who taught other people to reject idolatry, and they did everything that they could to stop idolatry. And the effect was this. There was a great time of reformation underneath these kings, and there were spiritual blessings that were given to Israel. And even though none of us are kings, even though none of us are presidents or prime ministers, we can nonetheless have an effect on the entire world around us. Our little bit of light that we have can shine out into the darkness, and it can dispel the darkness, whether it's the darkness in Okinawa, or the darkness in America, or the darkness that exists in the Philippines. You guys can make a difference.